Hi, everybody. It's John Kearon talking to Kieran Levis. We've decided that this would make a great kind of double act on an author, Kieran. It's a real pleasure because Kieran has written one of my books of last year. It's called Winners and Losers, Creators and Casualties of the Age of the Internet, and it is brilliant. It's wonderful case histories of all the companies we know, we love, we talk about Sony, Apple, but not just the successes, also the failures. And it is a great tale, but it's also got some really interesting what are the rules of the game? What's happening? And why is it happening? Why has Google been the world's fastest growing company ever? What's going on there? And, Apple hasn't always been successful, by the way. It's a great drama. And already I've waffled on far too long in an introduction on a BrainJuicer byte that's supposed to be bite-sized. So apologies. Kieran, tell us a
You
little.
don't need
Just
to apologize to me, John, after all those kind words.
but go on, tell us a little of what were you trying to get across to to people, the new thoughts that you felt the marketing world at least should sit up and listen.
Well, I've worked in new markets most of my life and as my professional life, and I'd always been puzzling with this question. Well, what makes new markets different from old ones, and what does it take to be successful in them? And so I was basically trying to answer that question. What are the qualities that companies like Google and Apple and Amazon and Nokia have in common? Companies that have been so outstandingly successful at creating new markets and, for the most part, holding on to their leadership of them. So that's the big question that I've tried to answer, and quite a few other about the nature of new and disrupted markets.
And you and I kind of caught up when you spotted an article I'd written, which was "Marketing has been the
That's right.
death of innovation," where I was just making a distinction that in trying to answer the same question between existing category innovations, which is 99, frankly, point something percent of all innovation, and genuinely new to the world categories or brands that create a whole new behavior and a whole new category, and how the rules in the latter, new to the world, just don't obey marketing theory. They're maverick and glorious and small and fringe, and they break the rules, frankly. And I know you were intrigued by
Absolutely.
this, but yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. The vast majority I mean, I studied about 20 companies in the research for winners and losers, and hardly any of them actually approached it with an analytical marketing hat on. They were pursuing a particular idea, which in most cases discovered a market, and that's the most important criterion for something becoming a radically new market. That the idea of the pioneers, and there can be more than one in many cases, that those ideas and what they're able to offer to prospective customers turn out to meet a very big need that wasn't being met before. And in most cases, these pioneers in developing a technology or a concept or a service, the first and the only people to have spotted this need. They don't start by analyzing customer needs, but by a process of trial and error, they very obliquely, I know a concept that you're very keen on too, John, they obliquely arrive at a situation where suddenly they find there is enormous demand for what they are offering. And most of the businesses that I've written about enjoyed enormous growth, not all quite as much as Google, but pretty astonishing growth.
And I think what struck me is the range of stories that you tell. Go right back to the origin of Sony just after the war, as well as I guess Nokia's prehistory. As well as their more recent telephone, sort of history, and telling as you were hinting at there the tale of how the pursuit often of a technical brilliance, something very difficult and new to do, rather than, as you say, the deliberate analytical pursuit of a market that they'd identified, then takes on a market, and in the latter stages of the book, then talking very, kind of knowledgeably about Google, but pointing out just how fast the Google growth has been compared, if you like, to the color televisions and the Sony Walkman. And can you talk a little about your sense of what's going on in the world? Is there something that's changed that's making it easier, or not easier, but it's possible to grow so fast, so big?
Well, obviously, the big thing is the way that we're so much more connected now, and the internet is perhaps the most important facet of that, but it's clearly not the only one. In fact, mobile telephony grew faster in Europe in the late 90s and early 2000s than the internet did. In the United States, it was very much the internet. But we've been living through a number of revolutions. First of all, there's the personal computer revolution. Then there was the net revolution. Then there was the mobile telephone one. Just to mention perhaps the three most important, but then been lots and lots of others too. The applications that people have built on these technologies and the different services.
I know that momentum is one of the things that you talk about in the book, and I know it's the subject you're going to try and almost make that the hero of your next book. The notion of just how long momentum takes and what is momentum. The idea of feedback loops.
Yeah,
tell us, give us a sneak preview.
I became really conscious of the importance of positive feedback loops in the course of writing Winners and Losers, because all of these companies that had these outstanding successes, including some that didn't manage to hold on to their leads, companies like AOL and Netscape, which didn't manage to establish themselves as long-term industry leaders, but all of them enjoyed this feeling of being on the most astonishing roll. Everything was going right for them. They were growing at a rate that none of them had ever dreamed of. And it's the concept that engineers have developed of positive feedback loops that reinforce themselves and feed on themselves is a very useful one in understanding this kind of growth. And I think, indeed, all forms of radical change. It's the cumulative effect of thousands and thousands of steps made, in some cases, by millions of different people that add up to this almost uncontrollable growth. The simplest way to describe is momentum. And in some cases, the combination of feedback loops and network effects led to the most astonishing monopolies. Microsoft's domination of the markets for operating systems and desktop software, eBay's domination of online auctions, and Facebook's more recent domination of social networks. And to a considerable extent, Google benefited from that process too. It turns out that there's only room for one or two really big search operations, and they are the most, Google's brand makes it by far the most attractive service to advertisers, and that accounts for it having been the fastest growing company in history.
And whether it was the Renaissance of Italy, kind of if you go way back, or the Enlightenment movement in Scotland, presumably that's a feedback loop. It gets a reputation, it attracts the people who are interested in that, it then builds a sort of a movement, and obviously it's now just much more obvious that that's what's happening on the net, because it's happening almost in real time. We can see it happening as Facebook or Twitter or something grows, exponentially every day.
Well, we can see it up to a point, because quite often, to take a rather less happy example, the financial crisis that we're not really quite through yet, that we now know from the work of people like Gillian Tett and others who've written about it so intelligently. Those feedback loops were building up years and years before 2008, when Lehman Brothers went bust and the Royal Bank of Scotland foundered. And it was, rather than being something that happened to the banking industry, it's something that many, many organizations were doing, taking progressively more and more risks, investing in products they didn't really understand, until the whole process grew to a crescendo that nobody could control. And I think it's very often the way that in the early stages, nobody realizes the cumulative effect of all of these steps. So momentum, in many ways, is invisible. We only really notice it when it's starting to have enormous effect, when it's already accelerated and is operating like a runaway train to some extent.
Well, Kieran, brilliant. Thank you. And I hope that the people that manage to listen into this get a copy of Winners and Losers before it becomes completely obvious that you are another one of the big thinkers with best-selling books, and frankly, they should book you now before you become, the kind of like competing with the American gurus at $50,000 a time. Now's your moment, everyone.
You're
You
too
heard
kind,
it here.
John. You're too kind.
No, I
Thank
mean
you
it.
very much. It's been fun.
No, I mean it. You've got some terrifically, interesting ideas, big ideas, and I think there's. I recommend it. And look, thanks for chatting.
Thank you.
Bye.